So I received a call from my staff about 7:50 this morning saying that they had discovered Confederate flags on the campus of our church. We were headed here because I was hosting a conference today of pastors focused on the issue of mass incarceration and how the church can respond to this American tragedy.
And what were the reactions of all the pastors from all over the country seeing Confederate flags on Martin Luther King's church?
Well, it was disheartening to see, but it was a clear reminder of how important our work is. We were dealing all day with this issue of the prison industrial complex, the racial inequities, the class inequities in our criminal justice system, the need for reform of our criminal justice system. And so those are the structural kinds of injustices that don't get nearly enough attention. And so my hope is that out of this terroristic threat, the issues that really matter will get more attention. And so we are offended by the flag and its symbolism, but we're also deeply concerned about the substance of the kinds of social inequalities that the flag represents. And so for those who stand with us and say that this flag has no place in American life in the 21st century, great. But also stand with us as we struggle to deal with mass incarceration, to deal with the fact that we haven't renewed the Voting Rights Act, and that there is an effort across the country, across more than 24 states, to make it difficult for American citizens to vote. If you're against the flag, you ought to be against that also.
How do members of your congregation and members here feel this afternoon, this evening, after this, what you say is a threat that was clearly on your buildings?
Sure, our members are concerned, and we've reached out to them, and the phone has been ringing. But Ebenezer members are deep in their resolve. If you are part of this church, you tend to have a kind of justice-making commitment in your DNA. That's what it means to be a part of this church.
Where exactly were the flags? They
were on the lawn. Some were right near the sanctuary. There was one right in front of our bell tower where hangs a sign that says Black Lives Matter. So imagine that right beneath a sign that says Black Lives Matter, someone placed a Confederate flag.
What do you think the people were trying to communicate by putting a flag right there?
Well, they were clearly trying to send a message. Our message is that we will not be deterred, we will not be intimidated, and this only deepens our resolve to make sure that we have a society that is open to everybody. And so the hostility that the flag represents has to be condemned. And the kind of structural hostility that leaves the nation divided has to be addressed. And that's why the pastors were here this morning.
What, to people who say that the flag represents Southern pride, you know, we actually spoke to the Sons of the Confederacy earlier today, and they said, you know, we do not advocate trespassing, we do not aggravate, you know, promoting racial tensions, etc., etc. You kind of know the argument.
Sure.
for the flag. What do you say to that, to people who still promote the Confederate?
There is a place in our society for the Confederate flag, and that place is the museum. It's a reminder of the way that we've had to go in order to become an America that is stronger and marching towards justice. I think that as you consider what happened in Charleston and in other places, the argument that this is about heritage and nothing else is becoming more and more difficult to make. And I think people ought to ask themselves what's really at stake. As the pastor of this church, I was deeply moved to see the legislator in South Carolina who said that Jefferson Davis is one of her ancestors stand and say in the wake of that tragedy that that doesn't matter right now and that the flag needed to come down. that's someone who has seen the humanity of someone else. And so we've got to continue that kind of dialogue and conversation. While the flag issue is important, I don't want it to become a distraction. We have to deal with the symbolism, but we also have to deal with the substance of the kinds of structural issues, racial inequality, the gap between the haves and the have-nots, mass incarceration, joblessness. These are the issues that we as a church are addressing week in and week out, and we'll continue focused on those.
I'd say the metro and as the world, is on Ebenezer Baptist Church again, and saying, oh my gosh, is this just a prank or is this a real symbol of hate? Is this really stirring up fears?
The message is clearly not a good message. And with the young man in Charleston, for example, here's a very young person who lived a long time after the civil rights movement. Someone taught that young man how to hate. And so I think the issue is, what do we do to make sure that our children somehow do not embrace the heritage of this kind of hatred and hostility? And that's why the conversation is so very important. And we need to have an honest conversation about race in America. And we have to deepen our resolve to really addressing the issues that continue to cause this narrative to morph in new ways and new forms with each new generation.